We'll call the City of Hayes June 26, 2025 meeting to order. We have 3 commissioners present, 2 in person, 1 by phone. First item on the order of business, any changes, questions, or comments on the minutes from June 12th?
I don't have any. Sandy, you have any?
I don't have any. Move approval.
Okay. We'll leave the minutes to stand as presented. Next item, the financial statement for May 2025. Jared.
Good afternoon, Jared Kuckelman, Assistant City Manager. This is a report of the revenue and expenditure activities of the City of Hayes for the month ended May 31st, 2025. Revenues in May totaled $3,102,813, a decrease of $1,780,938 compared to the same period as last year. Notable areas of increased revenue compared to May 2024. Miscellaneous revenue in the Capital Projects Fund increased $210,000 due to the receipt of the 13th Street cost share from KDOT. The Parks Improvement Fund miscellaneous revenue increased $11,900 from Hayes Baseball Association for Larks Park improvements, $9,150 from Women Who Lead for the Sunrise Park Phase 1 improvements, and $3,500 from the Community Foundation out of the Hayes Beautification allocation. Some notable areas of revenue decrease compared to May 2024. The largest share of the noted decrease above was due to the timing of the April sales tax receipts. They were received from the state in May of last year. Expenditures in May totaled $3,229,044, which is an increase of $537,129 as compared to 2024. Some of the notable areas of increased expenditures compared to May 2024 include capital projects expenditures were up $145,000 due to design for the Tallgrass Second Edition Phase 4 improvements and the police department facility, as well as continuation of pipeline easement purchases, increased projects for the water sales tax reserve $200,000. Some notable areas of decreased expenditures compared to May 2024. IT new equipment fell $32,000 due to the capitalization of the new IT vehicle, which was added to the fleet a year ago at this time. And new equipment reserve expenditures dropped $76,000 as a new trailer tree spade was purchased at this time a year ago. Month-to-date general fund sales tax collections were at $842,864, which was an increase of $5,417, or 0.65% as compared to last year. Year-to-date, general fund sales tax is still trending up at $74,628, or about 1.89%. The 6-month average was at 2.88%, which was a year-over-year increase of 3.58%. Year-to-date, county sales tax collections were at $482,681, which is up $16,956. The report of top 10 quarter-to-date sales tax collections by classification was down $41,950, which is down 1.4%. Those top 10 do represent 72% of the total sales tax collections for the running quarter. The total par value of the U.S. Treasuries for May was $11,717,000, with a weighted average yield to maturity of 4.2%, which is down 0.57% from a year ago. The total of the portfolio of certificates of deposit on May 31st, 2025 was $55,200,000 with a weighted average rate to maturity of 4.7%, which is down 0.32%. The total balance of the money market account on May 31st, 2025 was $2,200,000 with a current yield of 3.388%, which is also down 0.77% from a year ago. And total investments were down $1,576,358.
Make a motion to approve the May 2025 financial statement.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any questions or comments for Jared?
For me, the only comment would be is, the sales tax are still trending up. And, as most people know, that's what we how we fund our general fund. So it's a good thing that it continues to be positive. Not much, but it's nice to see that it's still positive. So.
Kim was here, he would share that the May collections, or I guess the June collections now, were up again.
Good.
I don't have the exact number, so you'll hear it next month, but they were up again.
Good.
So.
It's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to ask if we'd received those numbers yet, so that's good news.
Any additional questions or comments? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, passes 3-0. Next item on the agenda is citizen comments for non-agenda items. Would anyone like to speak to the commission for non-agenda items? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to the consent agenda. There's nothing there. So then we'll move on to item number 6, the CDBG grant for property at 1012 Main Street, 127 Investments LLC. The public hearing, open the public hearing at 4:05 p.m.
Jared Kuckelman, Assistant City Manager. So we will be talking about an application for a Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, through the Kansas Department of Commerce. So some background here first. The CDBG program is a well-known and established funding source for cities and counties that's been in place since the 1970s. The program is funded by the federal government through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. For small cities like Hayes that have a population less than 50,000, CDBG is administered by the states, and in Kansas it's by the State Department of Commerce. The City of Hayes did recently receive an application from a developer, 127 Investments, owned by Tim Spino, to apply for CDBG through their commercial rehabilitation program for the site at 1012 Main Street in downtown. So a bit more about the commercial rehab program. This program is designed to assist private property owners in redeveloping their properties that are blighted and helping prevent the spread of blighted conditions. In 2025, a max of $300,000 can be awarded as part of the commercial rehab program, with a minimum 25% match required by the developer. So you may recall that the city did apply for this program last year and was successful in receiving that application, and that project is currently underway now. So while commercial rehab grants go towards private projects, cities and counties are still required to be the official applicants for the grant. Commercial rehab is also a CDBG program that is more specifically targeted towards blight, which is a bit different from some of the other CDBG programs that are out there, which are often meant to target serving low to moderate income households. So a bit more about the project itself. The developer plans to renovate the second floor of the building that currently sits at 1012 Main Street. This building was first constructed in 1917 as the Hayes Building and Loan Association, and has since then been the home of many retail and service businesses. The ground floor is currently the home of Eclectic Threads Quilt Studio, which will remain there over the course of and after the project. And instead, this project will be focusing on renovating the second floor of the building to create 3 rentable Airbnb units that would be available to visitors and travelers. So here's the location of the building, right off Main Street in downtown. Here's a view of the building from Main Street. And then here's a view looking south off of 11th Street. You'll notice the side door over here. That is an entrance up to the second floor, which would provide a private door to the units on the second floor that's private from the quilt studio. Here's a couple of photos to show the interior. And then this would be a proposed floor plan. You can see on the right over here are 1-bedroom units, and then over here's a 2-bedroom unit with a living room associated with that one. So there are several steps and guidelines that have to be followed as part of the application process for CDBG. This includes a public hearing, which we're holding today. There are also 2 resolutions that must be passed, one that certifies the legal authority of the city to serve as the applicant, and another declaring the building to be blighted for the purposes of the application. Because of the numerous guidelines and rules that exist for CDBG programs, an interlocal agreement and personal guarantee have also been prepared to ensure the developer complies with these guidelines and takes responsibility for doing so. So as the official applicant, the city would receive the funds should the grant be awarded. The developer would then be responsible for requesting funds from the city, which would be dispersed pending approval by the Kansas Department of Commerce. No city funds would be distributed for the project, and the required 25% match would be the responsibility of the developer. So these are the options before you today. Should everything get approved, the plan would be to have the grant application submitted in July. A notification on the status of it usually comes about 45 days after submission. So these will be the actions requested. Again, because there's multiple documents, there's multiple motions that will have to be made. Stand for any questions.
All right, so we are in the public hearing right now, so I will stand for any questions, comments from anybody from the audience who wishes to speak. Yeah, go ahead. If you state your name for the record.
David Koschel. The proposed $300,000 CDBG grant for 1012 Main, to me, seems like exactly this kind of top-down, backwards government decisions, potentially, that erode trust. These are federal dollars being funneled through the city to help a private investor build short-term rentals, not homes for families, not relief for residents. Just another example of government trying to pick winners and losers. If the private market wants to build boutique Airbnbs, let them, but don't use a community development grant meant for low-income housing and real needs as a piggy bank for upscale tourism projects. That's not the role of the city government. Instead, if we're going to touch on housing at all, let's do it by getting out of the way, cut regulations that make it harder to build modest homes, waive excessive fees that drive up prices, and stop setting artificial standards that only big developers can meet.
Thank you, David. Anybody else that wishes to speak at this time? Any additional comments or anything from staff or the applicants?
Mr. Chair, I just want to, is Jared still at the microphone?
Yes.
He is now, yes.
Good. Jared, I just, you know how I am. I go back and read this, and I want to make sure I read it right. I think I heard it right last week, though. This is a commercial rehab program for commercially blighted properties. There's nothing that provides in this grant for low-income housing. Am I correct?
Correct. So with commercial rehab grant programs, and Brett could correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part, they go to commercial projects, and in this case, they tend to go towards commercial blighted buildings. So in this case, for this particular CDBG program, there is no element of requirements for low to moderate income standards that have to be met, whether that's employees or residents on that side of things.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood. I thought I did last week, but I'm checking myself.
I actually, on that topic, have a question. You started this out saying something about low income. Can you go to your presentation at the beginning where you were talking about that? I want to get a little bit explanation.
I believe I mentioned it probably on this slide. And again, to that point, with commercial rehab, the requirement that the city has to meet is to have the building be declared blighted, which is part of that resolution. Many CDBG programs do have a requirement that they serve low to moderate income households. So water and sewer infrastructure, for example, if we were to do that program, it requires serving an area of town that would benefit low to moderate income households in the community. Mm-hmm. But because this program goes towards commercial endeavors and blighted structures, it doesn't have the same low to moderate income requirement. If that kind of answers
it does. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
That's why it's easier for a community like Hayes to apply for this one than sometimes other CDBG programs, because those programs often require the community as a whole to qualify for low to moderate income standards, or you have to do a survey of the residents. And so this one doesn't, because it doesn't have those low to moderate income requirements, we don't have to do a survey, and the community doesn't have to qualify.
Good to know.
Yeah, look, David, and then Doug, you can go next. Sorry. Yep, you'll have to come to the mic. Sorry. That way Sandy can hear you too.
My question is the CDBG grant.
I'm sorry, who's speaking now?
Sorry, this is David Koschel.
Thank you.
With the CDBG grant, the commercial development, isn't that a subsector of it? Is that part of the same I mean, the low-income housing is also covered under the CDBG. It's all, the CDBG is one grant purpose, but it has subsectors underneath it, correct? So we could apply for this grant for developing these Airbnbs, or we could look at perhaps applying for a grant with the same amount of money for helping out lower income housing with their infrastructure and their sewer and water needs, correct?
So yeah, the city, we could technically submit multiple applications for different programs. We could apply for those programs that do serve low to moderate income households. And Brett could correct me if I'm wrong, but the state, it depends on which program we apply for, but we could submit multiple applications. So submitting this one does not necessarily preclude applying towards other programs, but there are certain limitations and does take into account whether the state would choose to award our community multiple grants, which they would have the ability to choose to do so or not.
And the request is for 300,000 is the max request you can do. That's
For
not
this
guaranteed
particular
funds.
program, that is a good point. Other CDBG programs do have other max
Okay.
requests. It just depends, and the state has the ability to set those guidelines every year.
Because the if you were to do it for like a housing development for CDBG for low income housing, that max request is higher than the commercial one, is it not?
Probably, I don't know off the top of my head. Yes, go ahead if you like.
Okay, yes. Sorry, we just wanted to figure this out.
I'm Brett Wagner with Governmental Assistance Services.
Okay.
I'm the grant writer that Tim has hired for this project, and I'll be the grant administrator as well. This is what our company does. We work with CDBG. I want to be clear that I do not represent the Department of Commerce, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or the CDBG program. I just know it really well. So, David, your comments are thoughtful, and I definitely understand where you're going with this. Hopefully, I can expand just a little bit. So, what Jared had said is CDBG money has to meet what's called a national objective, and there are 4 different national objectives. The state of Kansas almost always deals with 2, sometimes with the third one. Number 1 is benefit low to moderate income citizens. That means that whatever the community is or whatever the target area is has to be at least 51.1% low to moderate income. I could go into that in much more detail, but Hayes is not low to moderate income as a community. We all know there are probably neighborhoods that are low to moderate income that could be surveyed, door to door, asking about their income. We do that in different neighborhoods around the state too. The second national objective is to eliminate or prevent the spread of blight in commercial areas. That's what this program is aimed for. So it's in a completely different bucket of money than what housing or water and sewer or libraries or any of those other community facilities would come from. It's a very specific program aimed at preventing the spread of blight throughout cities. So each community under 50,000 is eligible to do this. There's only a certain number of dollars every year that are available. And this project aims to do that. This will fix up the building and keep blight from spreading downtown. Not that your downtown is blighted, but it could become blighted like a lot of other downtowns throughout the state. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of the different buckets of money that CDBG has. There's another one that's targeted audiences, usually people with disabilities, elderly. There's some special money available for them too. So in order for Hayes to apply for anything else, and Hayes would be eligible for up to $1.5 million because of the size of the community, you would have to do a targeted neighborhood study or a very expensive, time-consuming, community-wide study in order to qualify for those dollars.
Because these specific dollars couldn't be used for turning it into a housing project.
No, they do not. And in fact, so the program is refunded year after year after year. In the past couple of years, they've actually used up every penny that was available to this program. But if there was money left over this year, it would just go towards next year's program. It wouldn't be shifted into a different bucket of money.
Okay.
And the housing at the state level for CDBG, without getting into federal HUD programs, is for owner or tenant rehabilitation of residential properties. So not a new housing development, but fixing up existing homes.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that clarification. Doug, did you?
I just had
Okay, yeah, come on.
Good afternoon. I'm Doug Williams, Executive Director of Grow Hayes. And is it Brad? Britt covered the one concept that this is specific cause money that couldn't be earmarked for something else. The other thing I just wanted to say, if we don't get it, somebody else is going to. Our choice is, do we want it in Hayes or do we want it in some other community? It's going to be spent in some community. In my mind, I'd much rather it be spent in Hayes than somewhere else and to a cause that we can argue all day if we want to about the overspending of the federal government, that kind of thing. It won't get us anywhere today. But this money is going to be spent, and from our standpoint as an organization and from me as a citizen, I'd rather it be spent in our community than in Pittsburgh or Salina or someplace else. So I can't imagine why we would not support something like this, but I just wanted to make those two distinctions, one of which Brett made. So thank you.
Good point.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tim Spino. I'm the owner of 127 Investments. The only thing I'd like to add is, I really hope other developers use this grant for Hayes. I think this is the second one that we've done. And if you can imagine that every year, I hope there is a developer or somebody to come in front of you to say, hey, we're going to earmark this $300,000 for the Hayes area, and heck, if we do that over 10 years, that's almost that's $3 million. So I actually just say, I hope other developers or other people or other businesses take advantage of this program, because if we don't get it, it's one of those where other cities, other counties will do it. And the other thing I would tell you, without this grant, I would not be able to do the development at all. I would not be able to do it myself. I would probably have to wait about 3 or 4 more years to get the capital to be able to do this. So this grant really helps allow us to get this done earlier, get it done to benefit the city and all surrounding. So I just wanted to make those comments.
How long has that second floor been vacant?
Oh shoot, I think since the 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know exact, but there's no electricity in it. There's no plumbing. It's completely devoid of all utilities and has not been used for decades.
Okay. And then with 3, and then Jared, you can correct me if I'm wrong too, with 3 Airbnb units, that now qualifies it for transient guest tax. Because it's 3 or less than 3 would not have to do transient guest tax. That's not?
Not correct.
Okay.
Was that?
Sorry, Doug's coming to the mic, Sandy.
I'm sorry. I have.
Just a second.
Sandy going to talk, or all I was going to say
Never before you, Doug. Never before you.
She always gets the first and last word. I checked this issue out after some Facebook discussion, and basically anything that, as I understand, anything that runs through Airbnb, regardless of the number of units you have, they do charge a transient guest tax on the transaction.
Okay, so there's no minimum
number or anything like that.
Okay.
Which makes some sense to me, so I don't know how they'd govern that. But
That's kind of what I was.
their obligation, they have to collect the transient guest tax if they book the room and collect the money and ultimately give the money back to the landlord. So I don't think the 3 has anything to do with it.
So, Doug, that makes me question, though, so how does the city know if that money's coming back to us? And maybe that's a Kim question.
That's a Kim question, but he gets checks from Airbnb with an accounting, I'm assuming, of what units they were and how much the rent was and that kind of thing. And so,
Well, I would assume when the business files their taxes at the end of the year, they'd know
well,
what
I've
that
seen
property is used for.
A lot of people have been putting their statements from Airbnb online, and you see all the deductions that are made, and those dollars ultimately make their way back to the city and to whatever jurisdictions are taxing some of those dollars.
Gotcha.
Doug, it's actually a monthly thing that you send in. Every month you gotta send in your sales tax and your transient guest tax, and then they send it back to the city. Airbnb gives it to you, to
Okay.
the owner.
Okay.
You have to pay it in the state, and then the state gives it back to the city.
That's Aaron Dreyer
Okay.
talking.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. No, that's good information to have.
Thank
Okay.
you, guys.
Okay.
It's really good.
Because I don't know how any of those items work, but now I do. That's good information.
So we need to close.
Does anybody have any other comments or anything first? David, you
The
got
only other, I had one other. It's not a. It's a comment and question. I don't want to mess this up from where we're going. But Jared and I actually had a conversation about transient guest tax, and that's a question for another day, because I think there is some potential in that it may have to do with numbers of bedrooms in a single unit. So I've asked Jared to look into that further. It doesn't change the action or activity of this particular request, so we'll put that on the side, but that is being looked into.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, David.
David Koschel again. I understand that we'd get a little bit of an income tax revenue from these Airbnbs. I just feel like, so with a grant, granted I haven't ever filled out and applied for a grant myself, but with a CDBG type grant company, if there's a set amount of funds for a state throughout a year, and Hayes is applying for $300,000 of that, and then later on we're like, you know, we could really help the people in our community out with their plumbing issues, with their old cast iron pipes, with their old galvanized water lines and whatnot. Let's try to apply for another CDBG grant. Wouldn't that affect, wouldn't the fact that we already got one for an Airbnb, wouldn't that affect our chances of getting that other grant from there?
If I understand correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it would only hurt us if they applied for the exact same grant, right? So if they wanted to do something like that, that would be that different pool of money they'd apply for. And that would also assume he would get the full $300,000 request as well, and if there's any funds available. And then since we're not applying for it, we don't fill the application out, it would have to come from somebody doing it first to us.
But I think it's different pockets of money.
Yeah, yeah, so you'd
We
have,
would still be reaching out to the CDBG organization,
yeah,
correct?
yeah, so the developer would have to reach out to CDBG or somebody like Brett, fill out the application, and then they'd come to us as the official applicant, just the way the state works.
You don't think that, that an organization like CDBG might see, well, we've already helped out Hayes with this grant. Let's look to the other communities in the area and try to spread out this assistance.
They,
We
I
have
would,
no
s-
proof of that. I mean,
We don't have any proof of it, but it would make sense.
it could, but if I mean, just with my experience with grants, if we did that with every other grant we've done, we'd never get anything. I mean, I help write grants for clients all the time, and we send them out to everybody and anybody at any time. The worst thing they're going to tell us is no. And I'm kind of of the mindset, it's allocated funds, it's going to go somewhere. I'd rather it come here than anywhere else, because it'd be a direct benefit to the community rather than benefit somebody somewhere else. That even though, I mean, I would hope that they're finding other ways to do that as well. If we're going to fight for the money, I'd rather fight for us than let it go somewhere else.
No offense to Mr. Spino here, it would benefit the community to a point, but it would mostly benefit Mr. Spino, correct?
Well, I mean, most likely he's the one taking the most risk and putting the most dollars into it.
but he's filling a space that's been, if it's true what you said, for 50 years has been empty.
How many of the other spaces have been renovated by private developers?
There's nothing
But they put
restricting
all
them
of
from
their own.
applying for it as well, though.
But how many people have put their own money into it, saved up for a few years to get something like that off the ground instead of?
Yeah, and I agree. If that's the way it would work every day, that would be the best way possible.
I just think that for something like this, it would make more sense to maybe do a community outreach survey, talk with the community, and maybe apply for a grant that would benefit the people of Hayes overall
Yeah.
before a private investor, no offense again, first. And then if we could secure something like that, then maybe apply for that to develop our downtown, which I love our downtown. I was born here. So
Right, right.
I grew up walking the streets of Main Street and hanging out Dragon Main. So I love the idea of it, but I just think that our community needs more help in other places first.
Right. No, I appreciate your comments. I do.
Disagree.
Mason?
Yeah, go ahead, Sandy.
I just wanted to leave with a couple comments here. The thing that I haven't done to this point, and I want to continue to do with any private investor who's interested in investing in our community, I want to thank Mr. Spino for taking this on. As we said, it's been sitting there for 50, 70, 80 years, whatever, and no one has taken it on either by grant or privately. So I appreciate that. I think that the Airbnb issue, part of it, my concern or my interest particularly in this particular project is that we continue to bring people into our downtown. It's currently a destination. Everything we add to it, whether it's Airbnbs or other apartments like have been added in the past, anyone can apply for any grant, any city incentive, and we address every single one of them. So I appreciate when we look at this, and I don't know whether it was Mr. Williams or somebody else that said, if that money's going out in the state of Kansas, I'd rather it be in Hays, Kansas than anywhere else.
Anything else, Andy?
That's it. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything from you, Sean?
No, sir.
Okay. No, I guess, yeah, I appreciate that as well, because we have many people invest in the community using their private dollars. I wish I could do a quarter or a piece of even what a lot of these people do. I have my one property, and that's probably all I'm ever going to have. But for those people to take that kind of risk and investment into a property, that I would have looked at that and said no, because dropping $500,000 into a property that's been vacant for 70 years doesn't seem like something fun that I would want to do, but that's why I'm not a developer.
And it's not taking funds away from our general fund to help do it. I mean,
Correct.
He's bringing
Correct.
money in from the state or the feds. You know, we're not using any of our own money for this to happen.
Yeah, I mean, because you could argue, you know, state and federal dollars are still
It is our
dollars as
money.
well.
It is our money. Yeah.
But the difference is those are allocated funds, and you're not raising taxes for this.
Yep.
These are already things that they've collected, and they're going to go out to someone. And again, I'd rather it stay here. I would love if you know somebody or you have somebody that would want to do those projects, I would love to do it.
Absolutely.
It's one of the reasons that we expanded the neighborhood revitalization program to cap property tax for people for doing renovations to homes. So if they renovate their home for a certain dollar amount, their property tax remains stagnant, so they can recoup those costs, just so they can do that. And that's at an individual level or a neighborhood level or anybody else who does a development. So if you've got more ideas like that, that's awesome. I mean, that's exciting to see those kind of things. We just need the people like Tim to bring them to us. We can't go out and just start doing it. I mean, I think we could apply for a CDBG grant as a city, but we would have to have a property purchase to do it, right?
It depends on the program. Some,
Okay.
like this one, are meant to go to help assist private developers. Some assist public infrastructure improvements. But again, those different programs have different buckets of money, and they have different guidelines and requirements associated with them. So sometimes it's not always, it requires exploring each option, and Hayes as a community does not always qualify as easily under other programs. And that's historically been a challenge for Hayes to apply for CDBG.
Jared, we've had developers the last couple of years apply for grants to build low-income housing, but it's a different grant, correctly?
Those are
That's usually
different.
MIH.
Well, that's moderate income housing. There's also low income housing tax credits. Those also have to be awarded.
Right.
Those are totally different buckets of money, totally different programs.
But
Those
we've also-
required awards and,
Right.
going through processes that are outside of the city's local control as well.
But we also had to, what was a letter of support saying that we approved them applying for that, and we did,
Yep.
but they just didn't get it, and we probably will continue to do that, so.
Yeah, because I know most of Mike Graham's apartments he built are those moderate income housing ones. Those are the grants that he applied through us, right? Well,
Yes.
like kind of the same process.
Yes.
And then, was it Dial?
DP management.
DP
dial,
management?
yes.
Okay. Yeah, they started that process for the LITech and the other one. Is it MIH and LITech?
Yes, they applied for both.
Okay. Because they wanted to build that few hundred
Yes.
low-income housing units, and we passed that one. At least passed our letter of support.
Yes.
Waiting to hear back from those.
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep track of everything's got an acronym nowadays.
Can I make a motion to close the
Oh, yeah, we got to close the public
I
hearing.
don't think we need a motion. I think the mayor can close it, or
Okay,
do.
Mayor,
Sure.
We need a motion.
We need a motion to
We
close.
I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. If there's nothing else, we'll call for a vote on the closing the public hearing. Closing the public hearing, everybody say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Public hearing is closed at 4:35 PM. Okay, next section would be the interlocal agreement for the property. Which action requested is on the screen.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the interlocal agreement, personal guarantee, and sponsoring the CDBG application.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second on the table. Any questions, comments, or discussion on this interlocal agreement? No? If not, I will call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 3-0. Next will be the resolution certifying legal authority for the property, which is on the screen.
The top one. Make a motion to approve resolution number 2025-007, certifying legal authority and authorizing the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second on the certifying legal authority resolution. Questions, comments, discussion?
Nothing.
Okay. Then I will call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 3-0. Next, we'll have the resolution declaring the building blighted.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 2025-008, declaring a building blighted.
Second.
Motion and a second on the table. Questions, comments, discussions on the blighted building resolution?
We've talked enough on it.
Okay. Then I will call for a vote on that one. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Passes 3-0. I believe that's it for this CDBG discussion, correct, Jared? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for everybody. Appreciate your comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate everybody coming and talking about this. This is good
I
discussion.
agree. I appreciate everybody coming forward and giving their opinions. That's what makes this all work.
Yes, I appreciate those discussions quite a bit. Okay, next we'll move on to AD3 LLC rezoning. Request to rezone 2707 Canal Boulevard from Commercial General District C2 to Residential Multifamily District RM. Jesse.
Good afternoon, Jesse Rohr, Director of Public Works. So the first of my three items today is to ask you to consider the rezoning request that was received to rezone a parcel property from General Commercial District to Residential Multifamily. The property is at 2707 Canal Boulevard. The property is part of the original parcel that was originally developed for Dillon's. The land obviously has never been developed. It's been vacant ever since the Dillon's store itself was developed many decades ago. There's actually several utility easements in the property that make the lot somewhat challenging to develop, and the current owner has found ways to make that work in his concept for the development of the property. The property, as you can see on the image there on the right, does lie just to the east of the Dillon store there on Hall Street. The Dillon store is on Hall Street, the parcel's on Canal. The property is actually located just to the west of the Good Samaritan Center and other apartments there that are on the east side of Canal. Since we're talking about rezoning, we want to talk about some different things, one being show you the current and the proposed zoning and how it lies in relation to other surrounding properties. As you can see by the amount of red there on the map, the bulk of the property there is Zone C2, including the subject property we're talking about. The image on the right shows in the shaded area, let me back up a little bit here. That entire strip of property is owned by the owner, AD3 LLC. And the shaded area is what we're talking about for the rezoning. So the other parcels, portions of that property that are owned by 83 LLC will remain in C2 at this time. They would have the option of coming and ask for rezoning later if they so desire. However, at this time, they're just asking for that shaded parcel there. It's about 0.6 acres or so to be zoned to residential multifamily. Something else we always talk about for any rezoning is its relationship, the relationship of the request to the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. So what you see on the screen now is a direct image, a screenshot of the future land use map that's found within the comprehensive plan. As you can see, that area is denoted as in the comprehensive plan as mixed use. So obviously mixed use is that means a mix of commercial and residential uses, which is what, if you think of that whole area there, mixed use, that's what we have. We have single family in there. There's some apartments in there. There's duplexes in there. There's some commercial facilities in there as well. So it definitely meets the mixed use criteria there. RM, or the residential multifamily, it is completely compatible within the mixed use, as is shown in what we call the compatibility matrix chart that's found in the comprehensive plan. For this particular development, even though it is vacant, there's water and sewer readily available, with some minor extensions required that will be able to serve the property. Within the residential multifamily, there's several different types of uses that are allowed. So this first list here, these are uses by right. So if rezoned to RM, any of these uses are fair game at that point. No other approvals are necessary. The second group is called limited uses. These uses would also be allowed in the RM zoning if rezoned to RM. However, with each of these, there comes certain criteria that must be followed that's spelled out within our Unified Development Code, but it's still an administrative approval. It doesn't require approval of the City Commission or Board of Zoning or Planning Commission. And then the last group of uses that you can see here, these uses would also be allowed. However, if any of these uses were proposed for the property under residential multifamily, it would require authorization and approval through the Board of Zoning Appeals, and a public hearing and notification of surrounding properties. So very unlikely we would see something of this nature on this particular property. This request has gone through the Planning Commission, had the public hearing and the notification as required by state statute. These would be the options for the City Commission today. You could approve the zoning as submitted. You could send it back to the Planning Commission with specific basis for doing so, or you could overturn and overrule the Planning Commission's recommendation, which would require a 2/3 majority vote of the City Commission. And this would be the action requested. So stand for any questions.
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance number 4074, approving a rezoning request from Commercial General District C2 to Residential Multifamily District RM for 2707 Canal Boulevard as legally described within the adopting ordinance.
Second.
Motion and second on the table. Questions, comments, discussion on this item?
Did the Planning Commission know this owner wants to put a chicken coop on this property?
I'm thinking cemetery now that I know I can do it.
I'm back to my thinking. I'm sitting in one meeting that's 45 minutes, and we've got 2 investors in our community that continue to believe in the growth and the prosperity and sustainable economy of Hayes. And I want to thank Mr. Dreyer for taking this on. I'm excited about this. I'm anxious to see how it goes.
Absolutely. You know, I don't know how many years ago it was, Jesse, when Toby introduced us to Strong Towns about, you know, using the property within first, and this is exactly what that's all about. And I'm excited for what he's doing, and like the mayor said, investing in our community. I think it's great.
Anything else from you guys?
No, sir.
No, I think this will be a good use of the property. I'm excited to see what happens with it. So, all right. If there's no other questions or comments on this, I will call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 3-0. All right. Item number 11, general nuisance abatement for 206 East 14th Street.
All right, this item is to get you to consider adopting a resolution for a nuisance abatement at 206 East 14th. A little bit of background on the property first, and I'll show you some pictures of what we're dealing with. So the property we're talking about does meet the definitions as found in city ordinance of general nuisance items on the property. At this point in time, all proper notifications have been given to the owner. To date, there's been little or no action taken on the property since the process started a couple months ago. If there does happen to be any abatement needed by the city, if the resolution is passed, any cost to do so would be passed on to the property owner. And probably the most significant thing here is since 2014, there's been 25 various code cases for this property, ranging from general nuisance items, tall weeds and grass, alley obstructions, inoperable vehicles, and such. So it's not the first time we've dealt with this particular property. So here's some images from today, and probably the biggest takeaway from the next several slides I'll show is the pictures are going to look almost the same from 1 week or 1 month to another. Various items that were cited, or the truck itself may not be an issue, but the items within the truck, items on the front porch. The front property has been mowed since we were here last. The front of the property anyway, that had been cited in a separate case. This is rear of the property today, so within the right away in the back, the large logs that are there and some other various items. So this was from a week ago. It's pretty much unchanged. Again, a week ago as well. This gets back to the beginning of June, other than the weeds were taller in this one. Also here at the beginning of June. Some items, especially on the front porch, have shifted around. It's hard to tell whether things have maybe been moved or taken away or replaced by other items. This is back in May 15th. Again, here's the front of the property on May 15th. And then May 2nd. And so really, as you can see, there's been no, we're almost 2 months into it here with really no change on the property. So, and we've also had no contact from the property owner as well, trying to come up with a plan to take care of the items, which is always what we desire. Your options on this item, as with most abatement items, either approve the resolution for abatement, or provide us other direction. This will be the action requested.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2025-009 to abate the nuisance item located on the property at 206 East 14th Street, 10 days after their approval date.
Second.
Motion and a second on the table. Questions, comments on this item?
My only question, like that truck that's got the trees in it, I mean, why would that be a nuisance? I mean, it's in a truck, so how would you consider that a nuisance?
So by definition of city ordinance, the general nuisance ordinance, so the keeping and maintaining of things that might be considered junk or nuisance items, whether the pile's in a yard or in a trailer or in a truck, it's visible to the public from the public right of way, therefore by definition is a nuisance. In this case, it's probably the unsightliness of it.
Sure.
The tree branches on the truck aren't necessarily causing a problem per se for maybe a neighbor or something, but
Just with everything else?
the truck itself, I don't believe meets the definition of an inoperable vehicle. So we're not asking for the truck to be removed, but it's the items within the truck itself. So
Does the owner live in the
I
house?
believe it is owner occupied.
Owner occupied, so. I always, when we don't do a lot of this, but, I always drive by and I always like, would I want to live, beside that? And I know I personally wouldn't want to, but, yeah, so that's all I have.
Yeah, I didn't go by this week, but I went by last week, and I was very disappointed in what I saw. Yeah.
How many times do you contact the owner before you get to this point?
So it's actually 3 times. So there's an initial letter that gets sent out, just general mailing, with specific directions and some photos and items to take care of. If there's no response or action on the property after that, the next notice is sent certified mail so that we know they received it. So that was done, and then the third notice is after we've gone past that point and we know we're coming before the city commission for an agenda item. There's no notice that goes out giving them the dates of the work session and the regular meeting, that, hey, we're having a meeting to discuss this, and we encourage them to attend. I would love nothing more than for them to be here and either explain their position or the property or how they plan to take care of it, and those are the ones we can work with and usually get taken care of without having to go in and do a city abatement. But with this one, there's been no communication from the owner to the city with any of those notifications.
And you said there's been 24 open cases since when?
I believe that was since 2014.
25 since 2014.
So,
And then again, this is just a clarifying statement, comment, correct me if I'm wrong. The abatement process allows you to do that, but it doesn't mean you're going to do that. It means you have the tools necessary to take care of it should there be no cooperation.
Right, so by city ordinance and state statute, 10 days after signing a resolution, the city now has the authority to take care of it or hire someone to go take care of the issues. However, if the owner contacted us in a week and said, hey, I'm taking care of this in another week, here's my plan, we'd like nothing more than for them to do that without our involvement at all. And if they needed extra time to do so at that point, we would likely give it to them. But then if, even if they got halfway done and stopped and action and communication ended, we can still go in based on the signed resolution and finish the property. So, but fortunately, we don't always have to do that.
And like the tree limbs and stuff like that, I mean, that's all free to dispose of.
Right.
And I think I would be worried if it was my home with the stuff on the porch there, if I fall, start a fire, that emergency services couldn't get into me because they can't get past the stuff. I'd be worried more about the safety aspect of that. And a majority of these nuisance violations are complaint driven. You're not driving around looking for people to target.
Right, that is normally the case. Now, obviously, if we're driving past a property and the weeds are 2 feet tall in the yard, we're not going to wait for a complaint to address those sort of things. We're going to take care of them.
I've gotten one of those before.
Unfortunately, it's part of what we have to do. It's written into not only city ordinance but state statute as well, and just part of that property ownership maintenance requirement. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about this item? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 3-0. Next, UDC changes accessory structures. Yes.
Okay, last item for me today. This one deals with our Unified Development Code and a couple of the particular regulations within the Unified Development Code, or the UDC, as I'll call it from here on out. This one pertains to accessory structures. So, and as was mentioned last week, I believe the mayor mentioned something, since we adopted the UDC in 2016, I think we mentioned at that time that would be a living, breathing code. So we're always looking at it, since it's been in place, and what works and what doesn't, and what changes can we make to make things easier for development or property owners, or allow more density. And so this is one of those particular items. So this one deals with accessory buildings on residential properties. So currently, the way it's structured, buildings under 100, and the cap, the line between what's a small building and a not so small building, I guess, is 120 square feet. So that's what the building code uses. That's what the UDC uses. So for this item, we're talking about buildings 120 square foot or less. So your standard 10 by 12 garden shed or storage shed. In the 2016 Unified Development Code, current regulation allows or requires those to be a minimum 5 foot off the side and rear property line. So what we have come up with are enforcement challenges, because with this size of structure, there's no permit needed. So if there's no permit, people don't know the regulations, they're not coming in asking regulations, they're setting sheds where they can't technically be placed, and then we find them afterwards, and then it's a difficult process and having to tell someone they can't have it there. So what we want to do, one of the changes we're talking about, is eliminating that setback. So someone that wants to place a shed 120 square foot or less could place it all the way to the rear property line or the side property line and be within regulation. So take away some of the board zoning cases, the variance cases we've had. We've had a couple cases recently where someone came in to ask for a side yard setback variance to get closer. They're always granted by the board of zoning appeals, so there again, why not just write it into regulation so it's allowed? Additionally, the current regulation limits the number of accessory structures. Again, it complicates enforcement as well. Again, there's no permit needed, and it just has been a non-issue for us since 2016 when the code was put into place. So I mentioned the enforcement challenges. since there's not a permit required. Also, there's just such a low impact with these. If your neighbor puts up or you yourself put up a 10 by 10 or an 8 by 10 or a 10 by 12 building, the overall impact for the neighborhood is so small. Usually they're tucked away in the side of a house or backyard. Regulations don't allow them in the front yards. That's not changing. You're still not going to be able to place them in your front yard. But one of the reasons why we're talking about this is because they have just a fairly insignificant impact on the properties. So here's just kind of showing kind of the markup of the changes within the UDC. Then the one you see there about building permits, it'll say only structures greater than 120 square foot in size will have to meet these regulations. The box on the bottom down there talks about the number of accessory buildings that I talked about, so there'll no longer be a limit of 2. Currently, if someone has, and that number of accessory buildings applies to regardless of size. So currently, if you have a detached garage in your backyard and you have a small garden shed, you can't put up that gazebo or something because you already have 2 accessory buildings. Well, we want to eliminate that. And then the last change, and again, this one, I don't even know if it has come up within our discussions with staff since adopting the UDC in 2016, but it pertains to accessory buildings in the ag zoning district, which are primarily outside the city limits, so they're within our ETJ, but we don't really deal with them hardly at all. So, but current regulation says that accessory structures shall not exceed more than 50% of the footprint of the principal dwelling. Again, we just want to eliminate that completely because it's a non-issue. Here again is just another screenshot of a section of the UDC we're really just striking the entire section to make the changes that we're talking about today. So kind of a summary of the 3 changes: eliminate the side and rear setbacks for these small accessory structures, eliminate the maximum number of them, and then we won't have any restriction on the size within the agricultural zoning district. This item also had to go through the Planning Commission and the public hearing process, and so that has all been done. This one was also approved 7-0 by the Planning Commission. They were in total agreement with these changes. And so your options would be to approve as submitted. You could send it back or do not approve. And this would be the action requested.
Make a motion to adopt ordinance number 4075, approving the UDC changes as presented within the adopting ordinance.
Second.
Questions, comments on this item?
I just say I appreciate you bringing this to us, and I think it's great that we're getting rid of unneeded regulations. So, I mean, to me, that's what I get out of this. When you watch the Board of Zoning, when we go through the minutes, like you said, every time they always approve it. So, why do we have it? So I think this is good. So thank you for bringing it to us.
Jesse, I really appreciate staff is listening to our trades and our developers, making changes for our citizens that are best for everybody. So what I hear in this is you're listening, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you guys are continuing to review this constantly. It seems like we're getting more and more of these coming up, and then you're involving contractors who recommend things to us that don't make sense. They're unnecessary regulations. So identifying those, showing real-world examples of why they're unnecessary, I appreciate that a lot. So seeing this is just smart. Appreciate
All
it.
right, thank you.
Okay. Any other additional comments, questions on this? Okay. If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 3-0. All right. Thank you, Jesse. Next up, progress report.
Jared Kuckelman, Assistant City Manager. 281 yards of concrete was used to repair curb and gutter and 9,660 square feet of street pavement in the 100 block of West 4th Street. This was a pretty large project for the service division crew. It was completed at a fraction of the cost of hiring out the work. The west half of the street, you might remember, was completed in 2024, so we now have the full section there completed with new concrete. Alley maintenance continues across town this summer. This includes regrading, compacting, and adding new limestone material where needed, and this will continue for the next several weeks. Service division crews have been busy with applying pavement markings in various areas all over town, and this will also continue over the course of the summer until complete. Solid Waste Division crews recently put the compost screener back into service after it went through a complete overhaul in South Dakota, which took about 8 weeks. The 20-year-old screener, which had some sporadic issues, got complete new hydraulic and electrical components and lots of safety modifications, as well as a new paint job. All of this was performed as part of a recall and was performed at no cost to the city other than the transportation to South Dakota and back. So this unit should now easily perform for another 15 plus years. Parks Department staff removed the slide at Hickok Park that had been damaged and installed a new replacement. The slide is over 8 feet wide and 12 feet long and weighs 500 pounds. New shade covers were installed to replace the torn and faded covers at the Hayes Aquatic Park. Parks Department staff worked with Water Resources and Alex Stanton from K-State to perform an irrigation audit at Auble Bickle Park and Pratt Optimus soccer fields. We are still waiting the results on the audit, so we can see. Dirt work was done at the golf course to allow stormwater to drain off and not pool up on hole number 8. Staff planted trees at Rolling Hills Park and Kiwanis Park and numerous other parks throughout town. A total of 58 young container trees were recently planted throughout the city parks. These police department staff were present at the Picnic in the Park event recently. And police department staff also visited the Hayes Public Library on June 11th as part of the summer reading program. Water Resources maintenance staff recently repaired a water leak at 1805 Vine and at 2707 Hall Street. Staff have been busy at the R9 spraying rogue locust trees and sandhill plums in pastures to help prevent the spread of these plants. They've also been mowing the areas that were recently replanted with native grass to set back competition from weeds. And staff have also been removing trees in the pastures enrolled in the EQUIP program. Under the EQUIP program, certain trees based on their species and location must be removed. Irrigation audits and consultations took place on June 9th and 10th with K-State grad student Alex Stanton. Fort Hays State Grounds, City Parks, and DSNWK were participants. Water Resources and Stormwater co-hosted the Larks game on June 10th, spreading information on water quality and water conservation. The No Water Summit took place on June 3rd at the Hilton Garden Inn. Various guest speakers from KRWA, KSU, the Kansas House Water Committee, KDHE Bureau of Water, and the K-State Watershed RAPS spoke on various water topics in Kansas. CVB invited residents and community partners to participate in the Picnic in the Park event on May 24th to showcase the Ark Park and Splash Pad. Hundreds of people came out for the event, including visitors from Quinter, Ellis, Russell, and Oakley. On June 11th, CVB assisted Kansas Tourism with requests for a photo shoot in the Hayes area that included Rock Haven Spa, the Basilica of St. Fidelis, and C2T Ranch and Campground. June 12th through 14th, Janet Kuhn attended the Midwest Travel Network Conference in Grand Island, Nebraska, where the Kansas Gunsmoke Trail was presented with the Collaboration of the Year Award. This is a collaboration with the cities of Wichita, Abilene, Dodge City, and Hayes. The CVB also recently helped sponsor a Larks game in partnership with the Bricks, Sternberg, and Fox Theater on June 21st. The CVB also gave all Larks players Love Hayes t-shirts so they can represent Hayes when they return home at the end of the season. Public Works crews helped the CVB by installing new spring-loaded banner hardware and new welcome banners on 50 poles on Vine Street. The 13th Street reconstruction continues to progress. Curb and gutter continues to get installed, as well as some road-based preparation for the asphalt paving. 33rd Street reconstruction has moved to the south side of the street and continues to make good progress. At the current rate, the project should hopefully be completed by the end of July. City department heads also recently hosted the annual Employee Appreciation Picnic for employees. Airport staff performed crack sealing on pavement sections of the airfield as part of the FAA's required pavement maintenance plan. And they also repainted various airfield pavement markings. The FAA's 139 dimension tolerance for these particular markings is 1/2 inch. So equipment calibration and measurement of new markings is standard process to ensure the equipment is performing properly and the markings are within tolerance limits. Any questions?
Question, comments on progress? No, there's a lot going on all the time. You guys are certainly busy.
Certainly summer's a busy time for a lot of the city crews. So.
It is. Appreciate it. Okay. Next up, we'll have Hayes happenings and then upcoming events.
So here are some events and things going on in Hayes for the month of July. Wild West Festival concerts begin Wednesday, July 2nd, with Walker Montgomery opening for the Costellos. Thursday, July 3rd, will bring Austin Williams and Brock Wagoner opening for Drew Baldridge. And then Saturday, July 5th, will be Paramount and Reprise opening for the Spin Doctors. Gates and concessions open at 5:30 p.m. each night. Advanced general admission tickets can be purchased at the Hayes Welcome Center for only $35. That's for all 3 nights. Then the Wild West Festival fireworks will take place on July 4th at 10 p.m. People can go to the best viewing spots on the south side of town, like the multi-use paths between Fort Hays State's campus and the bypass, or the parking lot at Gross Memorial Coliseum. Citizens should not park vehicles on the bypass, as that would not be considered a safe viewing spot. Some other Wild West Festival activities include the Gary Moore Amusement Carnival from July 3rd through 5th, the Wild West Fest 5K on Saturday, July 5th, with an 8 a.m. start at the Hayes Aquatic Park, and then the parade will be that Saturday at 10 a.m. The free Lovegrass Summer Concert Series will continue with Shakedown Strings on July 9th at 6 p.m. at the Downtown Pavilion. This month's RPM Speedway races will take place as part of the Ellis County Fair on July 11th and 12th. The Tour de Capellen annual event, Bike Ride, will be Saturday, July 12th. This signature event for Hayes takes cyclists on a tour of the historic churches of Ellis County with special musical performances at each stop. There is also a bus tour option for non-cyclists. Last year, this event boasted 240 cyclists and 50 bus riders from 8 different states. This year's theme for the Ellis County Fair is Another Day in Paradise. There are daily events at the Ellis County Fairgrounds from July 11th through July 19th. Some special events to take note of include the KPRA Rodeo on July 15th and 16th, Midget Wrestling on July 18th, and Moto Rodeo on July 10th. And this year, all tickets may be purchased ahead of time online or at the gate. This month, the Fox Theater continues its 75th anniversary celebration year with 2 shows, the stand-up comedy show Moms Unhinged on July 15th and Afroman on July 17th. The Bazaar on the Brick Sidewalk Sale will take place Saturday, July 26th from 7 a.m. to noon in downtown Hayes. People can get there early to get the best deals. And as always, you can always find many more events and community events at the community events calendar at visithays.com. Any questions?
Lots of stuff going on.
Good stuff.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments on that? Nope. All right. Commission inquiries and comments. Sandy, you still with us?
I am.
All right. Go ahead.
I just had a couple comments. I really appreciated the discussion on housing as well as other accommodations. I think we're all learning a lot through the process. I served as director of Heartland Foundation for 5 years, so I certainly understand the intricacies of grants, and the more we learn, the more benefit we'll get. So appreciate everybody that's looking into those, making comments, and making us better as a community when we're looking at these grant processes. I also wanted to comment that I do appreciate Airbnbs. I think, I don't know the numbers I saw, and I'm probably wrong, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think we have 24, 25 in the community. And there are various times throughout the year that our hotels have limitations, particularly when Fort Hays and Hayes High and TMP all do their graduations on the same weekend, or they have homecoming on the same weekend. So having the extra accommodations with the Airbnbs, I think, is outstanding. We're actually in the middle of getting a update to our housing study. I think that the deputy city manager is going to be ready to talk about that maybe in August sometime. So it'll be good to have that update, see where we are from where we were when we started to where we are today, and what our future looks like. Lastly, city manager was called out of town along with the deputy city manager kind of last minute this week, and they both gone Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And though I thought maybe I was in charge, I will tell you it was Jared that was in charge. Jared, I just want to thank you. You really stepped up and took care of a lot of things going on in our community this week. A lot of reporting, a lot of putting together information. Stellar job, sir. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
See, Jared, I'm thinking we could save money and just have you and get rid of those other guys.
I think that's a good idea.
I don't know everything, so I don't. My reign can be short, and that's fine.
No, you do a good job always. So.
All right, Sean, you're up.
I just kind of what the mayor just said. You know, we have been working on so much housing the last few years, and you know, people. You know, you look on social media, people complain we're not building this, not building this. It's not because people aren't coming to us. I mean, everybody that comes to us and wants to do a new development, I think we've said yes to in the last 5-6 years that I can remember. I don't think we've said no to anybody, and I hope we continue that. I hope we, you know, I personally don't think the builders would be building the expensive houses if they didn't think they could sell them. And, you know, but we need everything. I would argue we need more workforce housing than we do the high-end housing, but, you know, you got to, you know, a lot of those people won't build them if they don't get the money, you know, the grants and stuff like that, because it's just not possible to do it. But we do have people that are interested in doing it, and I just hope we continue to allow stuff like what we got going on today with the 2 different developers. And, you know, without guys like you guys, Hayes doesn't move forward. I think it's a good thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I know it's housing is such an interesting beast. I mean, look at the Grove or Tallgrass or any of the housing developments we've done in the last 5 years. They take years to get started. Years, and it seems like millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And I guess some of the hardest parts is even finding the people to build them. Yeah. Or waiting on materials. I know transformers are the electric things, not the cars, are hard to find. I know Midwest Energy has run into some of that issue with getting some of them, especially even just finding like the mineral oil they use to power them. So they're finding other ways to, you know, reuse that oil or things like that. So all these pieces that need to come together takes a bunch of people, and to be able to do what we're doing right now is nothing short of a miracle. I mean, other communities across the state are reaching out to us saying, how are you doing what you're doing? And we're doing it without, we're not having to dip into our reserves. Mm-hmm. We're doing it through creative means, offering incentives rather than, you know, just handing out cash. Through programs, you know, identifying regulation changes or things that were, like the RHID program has been pretty successful for us. And I know when I came on in 2020, it was limited to certain housing. And we're obviously still, I'm going to say probably what the housing study is going to show us is we need all housing across the spectrum, from 1-bedroom studio apartments all the way up to regular houses. All of those things are done through collaboration of various groups and people and community members willing to step up and take on these hard risks and challenges. So, David, I know I'm grateful to have you here. I wish more people show up like that too. It's great to have citizens come and say, why don't we try this? Why haven't we looked at this? That's awesome. That's the only way that government works, is when the people are questioning things. The moment we stop and we become complacent, we start to die. And that's not what anybody wants. I've grown up here. My family's been here for almost 150 years. We don't want Hayes to die. I'm not 150 years old.
Oh, I thought you were. Okay.
But it's a place that I'm proud of, and a place I want my children to grow up and be proud of. So when they get to be my age, one, R9 will be finally done. And two, they'll say, look, my parents took the time, put in the work, and invested in me, invested in the community that they want me to be proud of, and I'm going to take up that mantle. Because they need to see it. It takes a lot of work to keep this place functioning as well as it does. I mean, there are communities across the state even that are struggling. Their budgets are, well, for lack of a better term, crap. They're struggling to get things done. They're falling apart. For us to have a progress report showing all this new stuff, and we've got a plan 5, 10, 15 years out of everything that needs to be taken care of, and we adjust that every single year. The budget we're going to receive next week, that Toby gave us an update on last week, which is, we're not expanding anything, so we're not expanding anything that we normally wouldn't do. We're keeping, I think the initial budget presentation shows us the mill's going to remain flat. Is that right?
No spoilers.
No spoilers, I'm sorry.
17 years.
Yes, for 17 years. We're focused on maintaining one of the lowest rates in the state, comparative for size, and making sure we're putting money back into reserves to pay for projects in cash so we don't go into debt. Absolutely. Which continues to have us be at a AA+ credit rating. And that's not just us up here. That's a community keeping us honest, and staff staying on top of things, making sure we get another 15, 20 years of life out of a machine that could use it. So it takes the entire community.
I think you should introduce our clerk that's sitting over there and hadn't had anything to say all night.
I think we should. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dayton Unring. I'm the Deputy City Clerk.
Welcome.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Kim and Jamie both left him hanging, so we had to have someone here to make sure that you guys, all your great comments are being recorded for posterity.
Yes. So go back and read through all the wonderful things I've said. My great big words.
Big words.
My big words.
Biggie.
Biggie. I can't believe you don't know Afro Man. Anyways, I think that's all we have. Any other questions or comments, Sandy?
No, sir. Thank you.
And no executive session means we will adjourn at 5:18 p.m.
It's a lot longer than I thought it was going to be.